Hello everyone. In this particular session, we will be discussing how to read a poem. If you were ever wondering how to appreciate poetry and how to gain a better understanding about poetry, then you might find this session useful. In this particular session, we will be discussing 5 different aspects or practices that might help us to appreciate poetry in a better fashion. The first of this is having an understanding about poetry at large. What is a poem? If you were to look through a book of poetry, then the first thing that you will notice is the strange arrangement of lines that is very different from prose. You will also take notice about the particular use of language. Poets often use language in a slightly different fashion than how we use in everyday conversation. You might also find symbols and imageries, rhyme and rhythm, which is not usually found in prose. If one were to sum up all these differences and at the same time be brief, one might define poetry as the special use of language, which is, of course, how some critics and thinkers have looked upon this particular form of literature. Hence, this, I believe, is the first and the foremost idea that I believe will lead someone to have a better understanding of poetry. That this is special language, that this is something that stops you on your journey and makes you wonder at what a poet is trying to convey. And the second thing that is a little bit more helpful is having an understanding about the poet. So, who is this poet? When did he live? What did he like? What are his other poems like? It can help us understand certain eccentricities of a poet. And poets are really eccentric people. And this understanding about a poet, the time period he lived in, the important events that affected him, are all key to understanding the intricate themes that are woven in a poem. The third thing I think is important in order to appreciate poetry is to wait on words. In more academic terms, this would be called close reading, paying attention to particular words and appreciating the poet's choice of words. Why does the poet use this word instead of something else? Why does this poet end the poem in this fashion? A poet is like a painter. Just like a painter chooses a color, a poet also chooses his words. And if we are to treat poetry as a serious business, which it is, then we need to pay attention to each and every aspect of a poem. This includes words, punctuation, lines, line breaks, stanzas, stanza breaks, the rhythm, the rhyme, all these building blocks of the poem. If we were to wait with them and spend time with them and understand and question their place in a poem, we will be able to develop a deep appreciation of the poetry or the poem that we wish to understand. The next thing that I would like to highlight is to try and achieve a macroscopic or a microscopic meaning. What is the next thing that I would like to discuss is understanding the poem at different scales. Now remember, a poem is a large piece of text. There's a meaning to the whole and there is meaning in the parts. So when you read a poem, try to understand what the poem is in its wholeness and also how each line, each stanza, each word contributes to the whole. So you must be able to zoom out and have a telescopic view of the poem, as well zoom in and have a microscopic understanding of the poem. And finally, the last thing that can help you in reading poetry and appreciating it is to think about a poem's theme. What is the poet talking about? What is the central message that the poet is giving? These, I think, are some pointers. These, I think, are some pointers that will help us understand poetry in a better fashion.